What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, I am doing my biggest project I've ever done here on YouTube, the top 50 greatest NASCAR drivers of all time. Keep this in mind, this is just my opinion, who I think are the 50 greatest drivers in NASCAR of all time, and this is the biggest project I've ever created. I think you guys are going to enjoy. Sit back and relax and enjoy the show, because I think you guys are going to enjoy this show. Starting off with number 50, we are going to be talking about Jim Pichel. Jim Pichel was able to win 25 career NASCAR victories, has 12 poles. He won 2 Coca-Cola 600s at the time they were called the World 600 in 1964 and 1967. He has 149 career top 5s and 230 top 10s and 421 career starts. Jim Pichel is known for having this thing called the Jim Pichel line, because a lot of people put him in the embodiment of the Jim Pichel line, because a lot of NASCAR Hall of Famers that don't have championships, and he's not in the Hall of Fame currently at the moment, he probably should be in the Hall of Fame with 25 career victories. I think Jim Pichel is one of the greatest of all time, because he was a great driver in his time back in the day, and I think Jim Pichel deserves to be on this list, and Jim Pichel was a very awesome driver. Up next, in the number 49 spot, we've got Rocket Man Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman currently has 18 career victories, 51 poles. He actually did win the 2008 Daytona 500, holding off drivers like Kurt Busch and Tony Stewart. He won the 2013 Brickyard 400 in a great duel with Jimmy Johnson. He won the 2002 Winston as rookie, only the second rookie, I think, to win the Winston. The only other one being Dale Earnhardt Jr. He has 115 top 5s, 262 top 10s, and currently 680 starts. Ryan Newman is built like a rock. A lot of people look at him as possibly the toughest driver in NASCAR currently at the moment, because Ryan Newman, he had a very horrifying crash. He almost died in a very, very horrifying crash in the 2020 Daytona 500. Thank God safety is a thing. But he was hit really, really hard in the door side. Corey LaJoie literally slammed him. He was able to walk out of the hospital literally, I think, 2 days after on that Tuesday. That was one of the most beautiful things to see. And Ryan Newman is still racing to this day. I really consider Ryan Newman one of the greatest because, one, he's possibly one of the fastest drivers out. That's why he's nicknamed the Rocket Man. But Ryan Newman, I think, is one of the best drivers in NASCAR history, and a driver that deserves a lot of recognition in this sport. Is he Hall of Fame worthy? I really don't know if he is or not, but Ryan Newman is a driver that never gives up. He always puts effort into the track, and that's why I am a big fan of Ryan Newman. Up next, in number 48, we have Geoff Bodine. Geoff Bodine won 18 career races in his time, got 37 career poles. He won the 1986 Daytona 500, the 1994 Winston, 100 top 5s, 190 top 10s, and had 575 career starts. Geoff Bodine, if it wasn't really for him, Hendrick Motorsports would not be able to be around at this time. Because at the time, Hendrick Motorsports was called All-Star Racing, if I'm not mistaken. And in 1983, they were possibly talking about shutting down and closing up for sale. Geoff Bodine came in and was able to win, I think, the 1983 Martinsville race, or 1984 Martinsville race, and basically saved that team from having to close their doors. If it wasn't for Geoff Bodine, that team would be around. Geoff Bodine is a legend, one of the big patriarchs of the Bodine family. I think, in fact, the most successful Bodine in the family. And Geoff Bodine was one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history, and a driver that I think did a lot for the sport in NASCAR. Up next, in number 47, we have Joe Weatherly. He got 25 career victories. He is a 2-time Cup Series champ in 1962-1963. He got 18 career poles, 105 top 5s, 153 top 10s, and had 230 career starts. Joe Weatherly back in the 1950s and 60s was a true definition of a badass. Joe Weatherly put everything up on the track, never gave up on the track, and Joe Weatherly did a lot in our sport. Unfortunately, he died in a 1964 crash. Of course, he was a lot older, and Joe Weatherly was probably getting to the latter stages of his career. He is one of the pioneers of our sport, and I think Joe Weatherly is a fantastic NASCAR driver. Up next, in number 46, we have Kasey Kahne. Kasey Kahne scored 18 career victories in his NASCAR career. 27 career poles. He is a 3-time Coca-Cola 600 winner from 2006, 2008, and 2012. He won the 2017 Brickyard 400 where he basically survived the race because that race turned into a wreck fest. He has 93 top 5s, 176 top 10s, and he had 529 career starts. Kasey Kahne had kind of an up and down career as a race car driver, but 18 career wins is legendary on his own. On top of that, 2006 for Kasey Kahne was a magnificent year. He won 6 races that season, which is probably the biggest defining season of his NASCAR career, along with 2012. Kasey Kahne only did have 3 top 10 points finishes in his career, but Kasey Kahne really was a great driver and a driver that deserves a lot of recognition. He wasn't like completely a championship caliber driver, but he was a solid NASCAR driver. Unfortunately, he had to retire early due to his health concerns, but he's still racing this day in the dirt late models. So Kasey Kahne is a great racer and still racing this day, doing a lot for this sport. Up next, in number 45, we have the man who loves the number 69 and like a teenager, Greg Biffle. Greg Biffle scored 19 career Cup Series victories. He won the 2000 Truck Series champion, the 2002 Xfinity Series championship at the time called the Busch Series. He had 13 career poles. He is a 2-time Southern 500 winner in 2005, 2006, so back-to-back years. He had 92 top 5s, 175 top 10s, and he had 510 career starts. Greg Biffle was so dominant in the 2000s, especially on the intermediate tracks. He had a surprise first career win in 2003. Follow-up, 2004, got 2 victories at Michigan, and I think it was Homestead. And in 2005 was his biggest defining year where he dominated a majority of the year. Greg Biffle was so great in his time. He was able to win, I think, like I said, 5 or 6 races in 2005. Being only beat by Tony Stewart and almost being beat by Carl Edwards in his first full-time year. But Greg Biffle, he's still pretty good. He came back to the Truck Series, finished 19th in the Truck Series in the 24 truck, which isn't great if we're going to be honest. But the last year before that in 2019, where we raced in the Truck Series at Texas Motor Speedway, Greg Biffle did a lot. And he won the race and held off a hard-charging Matt Crafton to win that race. So Greg Biffle, in my opinion, is a driver that is still great to this day. And Greg Biffle is one of the best of all time. Up next, in number 44, we have the mayor, Jeff Burton. Jeff Burton, in his time in the Cup Series, was able to score 21 career victories. He got 6 poles in his time, so not that many poles. He won the 1999 Southern 500. He won 2 Coco 600s in 1999 and 2001. Scored 134 top 5s, 254 top 10s, and has 695 career starts. The question is, do I think Jeff Burton is a Hall of Famer? I really don't know if he got Hall of Fame status. It's kind of close. He is actually eligible for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. I'm not sure if he would, in my opinion, be classified as a NASCAR Hall of Famer, but Jeff Burton, I think, is an okay commentator. He's not a great commentator in the NBC booth. Maybe he'll get in there because of that. But Jeff Burton in the late 90s was so dominant in his time. He did have a late resurgence, latter stages of his career from 2006 to 2008 when he was at Richard Childress Racing, where he was able to score 4 or 5 victories at the time. But his most defining time in NASCAR was the late 90s to the early 2000s. He was so dominant in that time, and I think that's why Jeff Burton deserves to be on this list, and I think he's a great driver in the sport. Up next, in number 43, we have NASCAR's first ever superstar, and Slash made a video on this guy, one of my favorite drivers on this list, Curtis Turner. Curtis Turner won 17 career victories, 16 poles. He won the 1956 Southern 500. He had 54 top 5s, 73 top 10s, and had 184 starts. Curtis Turner really never cared about winning championships. He really, more than not, cared about going out and winning races. Curtis Turner, to me, embodies a driver who, was a rebel in our sport. He created a labor party to try to dispute NASCAR. He was actually the first president of Charlotte, if I'm not mistaken, was the first president of Charlotte Motor Speedway. Today, he was partnered up with Burton Smith before his son Marcus took over, which I think Marcus is a great person currently at the moment. Curtis Turner is a driver. He was one of America's first superstars, race superstars, had a lot of fame, and he was a driver that always put the effort in to what he was able to do, and one of the legends of our sport. And like I said, Slashy's made a video on Curtis Turner, so you guys should go check that video because it's a freaking piece and it's amazing to watch. Curtis Turner is one of the best ever. I can't really put it too much and talk about Curtis Turner. Slashy's video puts a lot of effort into that. Up next, in number 42, we have Swervin' Irvan, also known as Ernie Irvan. Ernie Irvan had 15 career victories in his time, 22 poles. He won the 1981 Daytona 500, 68 top 5s, 124 top 10s, and he had 313 career starts. Ernie Irvan, in my honest opinion, is a badass. He came back from a very, very horrifying crash in 1984 at Michigan, came back in 1986 and was able to win. Many people were crying in tears of joy to see him come back and win. Ernie Irvan was a great driver in the 90s. You know, he emerged and kind of helped build up the Morgan McClure team before they kind of became a dead team. They were dominant back in the 90s thanks to guys like Ernie Irvan, of course, guys like Sterling Marlin. But Ernie Irvan is a legend of our sport and a driver that should be recognized and one of the most defining drivers of the 1990s. A driver that should never be forgotten and a driver, in my opinion, that if he's not in the Hall of Fame yet, he should be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame because he probably should be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Up next, in number 41, we have Neil Bonnett. Neil Bonnett scored 18 career victories in his NASCAR career, won 20 poles. He won the 1981 Southern 500, the 1983 Coca-Cola 600, 83 top 5s, 156 top 10s, and had 362 career starts. Unfortunately, the sad thing about Neil Bonnett, he tragically passed away in a very bad practice crash in the 1994 Daytona 500 for the practice. Due to having a broken shock mount, would go left and basically die in a crash. Neil Bonnett, I think, was a defining person, a great commentator as well, by the way, when he was with CBS. He is one driver who was a badass as well. Great friends with Dale Sr. He's a driver that was great for the sport of NASCAR and a driver that if he would have stuck around for a lot longer, he could have been longer in the commentary booth. Not only that, I think Neil Bonnett should also be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame for his great defining NASCAR career. Up next, in number 40, we have Mr. September and the oldest winner and the driver to win a NASCAR Cup Series race, Harry Gant. Harry Gant won 18 career NASCAR victories, 17 poles. He won 2 Southern 500s in 1984 and 1981. He, like I said, is the oldest winner in NASCAR history, won in 1992. And he has 123 top 5s, 208 top 10s, and had 474 career starts. Harry Gant is a legend. He's nicknamed Mr. September because he won 4 straight races in 1991. And one of the oldest drivers to go out there and win, you know, he was kind of a late bloomer in his career. He didn't win his first NASCAR race until 1982 at the age of 41 years old. I believe he's the youngest driver to, I'm not the youngest driver, the oldest driver to win their first career race. He's just a legend of our sport. And he's in Mr. September, of course, because like I said, he won as much as he did in September, won 4 straight races in September. A driver that, you know, should also be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame if he's not in the NASCAR Hall of Fame yet, because Harry Gant brought a lot to the NASCAR table and is a great driver for the sport and a driver that deserves a lot more praise than he gets. Harry Gant is number 40 on this list. Up next, in number 39, we have Ricky Rudd. Ricky Rudd was able to win 23 career NASCAR victories, got 29 poles. He won the 1987 Brickyard 400. He is nicknamed Rooster, 194 top 5s, 374 top 10s, and was able to start 906 races in his career. Ricky Rudd, to a lot of people, is nicknamed the Iron Man. Ricky Rudd raced many years of his career. I think he had the most consecutive seasons for a long time, racing in the sport for like 1980 to like 2005, like 25 straight years, racing full-time in the Cup Series. Ricky Rudd is an Ironman of sport, a driver that is a legend, a Hall of Famer in my eyes, defined the times in the 1980s and 1990s, helped build up Rick Hendrick's organization as well, and was one of the first drivers to win with Rich Choice Racing. I think Ricky Rudd is a legend of our sport and a driver deserving on this list. Up next, in number 38, we have one of the greatest commentators and one of the greatest drivers of all time, combinations of all time, Benny Parsons. Benny Parsons has 21 career NASCAR victories. He won the 1973 Cup Series champion, 20 poles, 1975 Daytona 500 champion, the 1980 World 600 known as the Coca-Cola 600. He won he had 199 top fives, 283 top tens. He had 526 career starts. He is a broadcasting legend from 1988 to 2007 on broadcasting stations like ESPN, NBC, and TNT. And he is known for his very awesome quote, "Man, oh man." When you look at a NASCAR booth, and many people would agree with me on this, Benny Parsons is a NASCAR person that you would like to have in the booth. He brought the energy to the booth, brought the excitement to the booth. And not only that, he did the same thing in the cars. He's a driver that kicked ass in the cars, did amazing things. And Benny Parsons is a driver that will never be forgotten in the sport. And Benny Parsons, we love you. And I wish we could read a car named Benny Parsons so we could bring him back, maybe back up to the booth, because NBC and Fox definitely need him back in the booth. I wish he was alive to this day, but unfortunately passed away from cancer, which sucks. Up next, in number 37, we have Bobby Labonte. Bobby Labonte has 21 career NASCAR victories. He won the 2000 Cup Champ, but he also won the 1991 Xfinity Series Championship. He had 26 career poles. He won the 1985 Coca-Cola 600, which actually was his first career NASCAR victory, like Jeff Gordon. He won the 2000 Brickyard 400. Also that same year, won the Southern 500. He had 115 top fives, 203 top tens, and he had 729 career starts. Bobby Labonte is a driver that is really awesome. Bobby Labonte was probably the first driver that really helped build Joe Gibbs up. Yes, Dale Jarrett definitely helped build Joe Gibbs up as well when they started to help that team really build up. But Bobby Labonte is one of those drivers that just dominated in the 1990s. Kind of a late bloomer. Well, not a late bloomer, but kind of a driver who got his success later in his career. Well, early in his career. But Bobby Labonte is a driver who's a legend of our sport, a NASCAR Hall of Famer as well, and should be for what he did for the sport. I was very happy because, again, I'm a huge Joe Gibbs racing fan, especially back in the 90s when Tony Stewart and Bobby Labonte were together. Those two were two of the most defining drivers of that season. Bobby Labonte is a legend of the sport. I am very glad to have him on this list. Up next, we have the brother of Bobby Labonte, Iceman Terry Labonte. Terry Labonte won 22 career victories. He had 2 Cup Series championships in 1984 and 1996. He had 27 career poles. He is a 2-time Southern 500 winner in 1980, which was his first career win in 2003. He had 182 top 5s, 361 top 10s, and had 890 career starts. Terry Labonte is an Ironman, a driver that never gave up, put a lot of work into it. You know, his last really competitive year in 2003, had a fantastic year, finished 9th in the points, and won his last career race. And I don't think he dominated the race 2003, but he had a lot of laps left in that one. I went back and watched it. That's a classic race. You guys should definitely go watch that race. But Terry Labonte is a driver who dominated in the 80s and 90s, kind of an underdog of our sport in a sense, because he kind of won with an underdog team in the 1980s, and then he came over to Rick Hendrick in 1994, if I'm not mistaken, and he started dominating over there in 96, held off Jeff Gordon to win the championship due to his consistency. Unfortunately for Jeff Gordon in 1996, he was too inconsistent. But Terry Labonte is a driver that is a legend of our sport, a NASCAR Hall of Famer in 2012. And he's a driver who does 2012, 2015, I can't remember what year he got in, but Terry Labonte is a driver who is a legend of our sport and a driver that deserves to be a true champion. Up next, in number 35, one of our first young and current drivers in our sport, we have Joey Logano, also known as Sliced Bread. Joey Logano already has contracted 25 career victories. He won the 2018 Cup Series champion, 22 poles. He is the 2015 Daytona 500 winner, 123 top 5s, 215 top 10s, and had 426 career NASCAR starts. Joey Logano, in my honest opinion, is going to be a lot higher on this list just because of right now he's at this point. The fact that Joey Logano is only 30 years old and has 25 career victories is incredible. And Joey Logano is still got plenty of time in his career. The fact he's been in sport for 12 years is insane on its own, and he's done this much. But, you know, Joey Logano is a driver who is a legend. Well, to me, it's kind of starting to become a legend of our sport. Joey Logano is a driver who is already, to my opinion, a NASCAR Hall of Famer, and he's just beginning his career. I mean, I think we're going to be looking at a driver in the next 5 to 10 years, and he's going to have probably 40 to 50 career victories and probably at least 1 or 2 more championships in his career. Joey Logano is one of the most defining drivers currently at the moment. Yes, he's kind of had an up and down year this year in 2020, but Joey Logano is still a driver who is a contender for the Final Four this year. There's a good chance he could end up making the Final Four this year and having a chance to go win his second championship. But we'll have to see if that comes through. But Joey Logano is a great driver of our sport. Up next, in number 34, we have Martin Truex Jr. Martin Truex Jr. currently right now has 27 career victories. He has 201, 2017. He is actually the 2017 Cup champ. He is a two-time Xfinity Series champion as well in 2004 and 2005. 19 career poles. He won two Coca-Cola 600s in 2016 and 2019. He's a 2016 Southern 500 champion. He has 113 top fives, 222 top 10s currently at the moment, and he has 540 starts. Martin Truex Jr. is kind of an underdog in our sport. He's kind of also a later bloomer in his career. He really didn't start winning a lot of races and contending for championships a lot more really until 2015. But really ever since 2015 and being at Furniture Row Racing when he had Cole Pearson with him, which is a very defining part of it, by the way, Martin Truex Jr. has dominated the reins of our sport and, in my opinion, has put himself from kind of a driver who was kind of an underdog who didn't do enough in our sport to a driver that deserves to be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, helped Furniture Row Racing get their only championship before they ended up closing shop 2 years later. Martin Truex Jr. is a defining driver in our sport. And not only that, Martin Truex Jr. brought a lot of consistency to our sport. And I think that's why Martin Truex Jr. will be an NASCAR Hall of Famer and a driver that definitely deserves to get up to this point in his career. Up next, in number 33, we have one of the Hollywood drivers, Tim Richmond. Tim Richmond had 13 career victories in his time, 14 poles, 42 top 5s, 78 top 10s, and he had 185 career starts. Unfortunately for Tim Richmond was a driver who probably would have had a lot more wins in his career, but unfortunately in the late 80s, he contracted AIDS, which unfortunately that is a bad thing. Unfortunately, back in the 1980s, unlike now, AIDS was very hard to basically get rid of in a sense. He really was hard to get rid of. Freddie Mercury unfortunately passed away from that. But Tim Richmond, in my honest opinion, is a driver that embodies legendariness, a driver who was very dominant in the late 80s, and a driver, if he would have been around a lot longer in the sport, he probably would have gone higher on this list. And the reason he's a little bit higher than some of the drivers on this list is because I think he would have been ahead of some of the drivers here. And I think Tim Richmond is a driver that deserves a lot more recognition and praise than he has gotten. And unfortunately passed away due to AIDS, but it hurts, man. One of the drivers who've been around for a very long time. It kind of was another driver who helped build up Hendrick Motorsports. Thank you, Tim Richmond, for helping Hendrick Motorsports become a dominant team. Up next, in number 32, we have Davey Allison. Davey Allison won 19 career victories, had 14 poles. He was the 1992 Daytona 500 winner, along as with the 1981 Coca-Cola 600. Jeez, I cannot talk. He had 66 top 5s, 92 top 10s, had 191 starts. Now, Davey Allison should probably, for a lot of people, probably think, he should probably be higher on this list. But in my honest opinion, Davey Allison kind of just stays here for now. I think if he would have been around for 5-10 more years, unfortunately, his career got cut short due to a helicopter wreck. He was very good. He was still having a consistent year in 1993. I think Davey Allison would have won a couple championships, probably would have still been racing up to about 2005. Around that time, he would have been racing for at least the next 5 to 10 years. But Davey Allison is a legend of our sport. He never gave up. He won multiple races at Talladega as well. And a driver that I think is a great driver in our sport. Up next, in number 31, we have Fred Lorenzen. Fred Lorenzen won 26 career victories, had 32 poles. He won the 1965 Daytona 500. He was a two-time Coca-Cola 600 winner in 1963 and 1965. He's the first driver to surpass $100,000 in earnings in a single season. He did that in 1963. He is 75 top 5s, 84 top 10s, and he has 158 career starts. Fred Lorenzen in the 1950s and 60s was so dominant. He was one of those drivers that kind of helped build up Hallman and Moody, one of those smaller organizations back in the day, and a driver that did a lot for the sport. And I'm glad to see that Fred Lorenzen gets a lot of recognition. I think he is a NASCAR Hall of Famer. I don't know if he isn't a NASCAR Hall of Famer. He should be one because he is a great driver in the sport. Up next, at number 30, we have cousin Carl Edwards. Carl Edwards has 28 career victories. He won the 2007 NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship. He had 22 poles. He won the 2015 Coco 600. He also, that same year, which was his only other win of the year, he won the 2015 Bojangles Southern 500, the Southern 500. He has 124 top fives, 220 top tens, 445 starts, and he's also known for his signature backflip. One of the most defining drivers from the state of Missouri, Carl Edwards, was really out from the gates, a very talented driver. He's picked up by Jack Roush and came into that team at probably the right time. Was great in the Truck Series for jumping up to the NASCAR Cup Series 2005, where he's able to win 4 races that season, 3 or 4 races in that season. And ever since then, he's been consistent. Unfortunately, he all of a sudden retired after a really bad crash in 2006. He was one driver who really almost won championships in his career, but he all of a sudden suddenly retired in 2017 when basically he just escaped this farm. We've seen him at times at certain positions like the TRD facility, but Carl Edwards, in my opinion, if he would have stayed around for a lot longer, he probably would have won a few more victories of his career. And I think another reason was he probably got tired of a lot of stuff going on in NASCAR at the time because we still had Brian France in the sport. But now, if guys like Jim France are still running, I think that the sport would be in a better shape. And he probably still would be in the sport currently at the moment. Up next, in the number 29 spot, we have Rex White. Rex White won 28 career NASCAR victories. He was the 1960 Cup Series champion. He's also the shortest champion ever. I think it was 5 feet 4 inches. He had 36 career poles. He had 115 top fives, 163 top tens, and he had 233 career starts. Rex White was a defining driver of the 1950s and 1960s. Another driver in our sport that was defining, and a driver that deserves a lot more recognition than he gets. Rex White is also a NASCAR Hall of Famer and a legend of our sport. Up next, in the number 28 spot, we have Brad Keselowski, also known to a lot of people as Horseface. Brad Keselowski currently right now has 33 career victories. He is the 2012 NASCAR Cup Series champion. He is also the 2010 NASCAR Xfinity Series champion and one of the most dominating years that year. He has 17 poles. He won not only in 2018, the 2018 Southern 500, but he also won the Brickyard 400 that year. He was a 2020 Coco 600 winner. He had 124 top fives and 205 top tens right now, and he currently has 404 starts in his career, but that number will go up since he is still currently racing. Brad Keselowski is a driver since 2011, has really been dominating in the NASCAR Cup Series. He's on average winning 2 to 3 races every year. Not only that, he is a defining driver of this generation, a driver that's really grown on me as well as a driver in our sport. I used to not be a big fan of Brad Keselowski, but honestly, over the last couple of years, Brad Keselowski is also a great voice for the sport, and a driver maybe should run for NASCAR in the future, but Brad Keselowski still is great in our sport. He's got a chance to win the championship this year. He's having a really quiet, good year, and it's been showing he's been very consistent. He's the only driver this year in Cup that's had any competition for Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick really this year. And I think that Brad Keselowski has a very good chance to win the championship. But Brad Keselowski is a very awesome and defining NASCAR driver. Up next, in the number 27 spot, we have the one of the Busch brothers, but it is not Kyle Busch. It is Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch currently has 31 career victories. He was the 2004 Cup Series champ the first year of the NASCAR playoffs. He has 28 career poles. He won the 2010 Coco 600, and he won the 2017 Daytona 500. He has 147 top fives and 313 top tens, and he has a 711 starts. Talk about consistency from Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch is a very consistent driver in NASCAR. Not only that, Kurt Busch really has changed his image. He used to be a driver who had a very, very bad temper. But over the last couple years since joining Stewart Haas 2014, he really had, when he joined SHR in 2014, when he was there until 2018, he had a very, very clean image. He really cleaned up his act. He's a driver I've really grown attached to, really ever since the whole situation with Patricia Driscoll and him, where we found out that he was not the person causing the problems. She was the person causing the problems. Kurt Busch, in my opinion, is a driver that will be NASCAR Hall of Famer. He's a driver who is an underdog, an underappreciated driver in our sport, and I think he will be a driver that we remember for years to come. Up next, in number 26, we have Dale Earnhardt Jr. He had 26 career victories. He's a two-time Xfinity Series champion from 1998 and 1999. He is a four-time owner champion in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, 2004, 2005, 2017, and 2018. He had 15 career poles. He was a 15-time most popular driver. He had 149 top fives, 260 top tens. He has 631 starts, and he is currently right now doing a lot of commentary work in NBC. Now, a lot of people are asking me, why is Dale Jr. above guys like Brad Keselowski and Kurt Busch? The biggest reason I put Dale Jr. up at number 26 is I think Dale Jr. is a defining driver of our sport. Most people recognize Dale Earnhardt Jr. Not only that, he's had to carry this sport really since his father's passing. And if it wasn't for Dale Jr., I don't know how the sport would be currently right now, if we're going to be honest here. I think Dale Jr. has done a lot for the sport. He's had to put himself in his shoes, and he still is carrying the sport in a great shape to this day. That is why Dale Jr. is high up at number 26. Up next, and we start the second half of this list, we have Dale Jarrett. Dale Jarrett has 32 career wins. He won the 1999 Cup Series Championship, 16 poles. He is a three-time Daytona 500 winner, 1995, 1996, and 2000. He is a two-time Brickyard 400 winner, 1996 and 1999. He won the 1996 Coca-Cola 600. He had 163 top fives, 260 top tens, and 668 starts. And he's still doing really great in the commentary work from 2007, where he was in the Xfinity Series races, but he became a full-time commentator in 2008, and he's still a really awesome commentator to this day, and he still works in the commentary booth at NBC. Dale Jarrett was a fantastic driver in the 1990s. He got his first win back in 1991 at Michigan in a duel between him and Davey Allison, and really ever since then, it set the benchmark for his career. He is probably the most defining driver at the Yates Racing team. He's a driver who dominated in that number 88 team. He won all but one of his races with that, all but two or three of those races that he won was with Yates Racing. He won a lot with that team and is a driver that was defining, and he's still a driver who is great to say, just like his father. Up next, in number 24, we have Fireball Roberts. Fireball Roberts, at his time, won 33 career victories, had 32 poles. He won the 1962 Daytona 500. He was a two-time Southern 500 champion in 1958 and 1963. He had 93 top fives, 122 top tens, and he had 206 career starts. Unfortunately, his career was cut short, so he really couldn't do a lot more because his career got cut short in 1964 in the World 600. He had a very horrifying crash, and unfortunately, a few weeks later, if I'm not mistaken, he died due to complications from that crash because he had fourth degree burns, if I'm not mistaken, like really bad burns, and unfortunately passed away because of that. Because of his death, the fire suit was invented, and every sport uses a fire suit because of his passing. I think he is a defining driver of the sport, one of the best in the 1950s and the early 60s, a driver who was defining and a driver who would have won a lot more races in his time. But Fireball Roberts is a legend and a driver who did a lot for the sport. And Fireball Roberts is a true American badass. Up next, in number 23, we have Bobby Isaac. Bobby Isaac was able to win 37 career Cup Series victories. He was the 1960 Cup Series champion who had 48 career poles. He had 134 top fives, 170 top tens, and he had 308 starts. Talk about a great percentage. More than half his races in his career, he was able to finish in the top 10. Bobby Isaac was a driver that's kind of underrated. A lot of people don't really talk about how good Bobby Isaac really was, but in the 1970s, especially the early 1970s, he was a fantastic driver, very consistent, very prowess, and that is why he is a NASCAR Hall of Famer. Not only that, Bobby Isaac, just dominated the 1970 season. A lot of people thought, this is going to be another championship for Richard Petty, but Bobby Isaac came in there and dominated and did so well in his time, and he was a driver that did a lot for the sport. And Bobby Isaac stays at number 23. I think he ended up getting out of the car in 1970. I think he ended up leaving the car because there were ghosts in Talladega. I think there's a story about that. I can't remember that story very well, though. Up next, in number 22, we have Matt Kenseth, or also some people, Max Kansas. Matt Kenseth has currently 39 career victories. He was the 2003 Cup Series champion. He had 20 career poles. He won 2 Daytona 500s in 2009. He was so close to winning in 2016 for having contact with Denny Hamlin. Got a little bit loose. Hamlin had a fantastic run, came up and blocked that. That ended up failing. He was the 2000 Coca-Cola 600 winner, the 2013 Southern 500 winner as well, 182 top fives, 331 top tens, and he had 688 career starts and is still racing to this day. Most likely, though, not racing after the 2020 season. Matt Kenseth was a defining driver in the 2000s. He was very consistent everywhere he went. Driver that, if anything, is underrated in a sense to drivers in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, a driver that will be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame, in my opinion. I've always been a big Matt Kenseth fan myself. I've always liked how consistent and clean he was. 2015 is a different exception with him and Joey Logano, but that was one of the most defining ones, I think, of his career as well, because I think that was just incredibly funny. I think that's one of the best things that Matt Kenseth ever did. But Matt Kenseth did a lot in the sport. You know, he was consistent, always winning races every year, never gave up. 2013, almost went on to win a championship, but he got beat by Jimmy Johnson. I think Matt Kenseth did a lot for the sport, and I think he will be a NASCAR Hall of Famer in the future. Up next, in number 21, we have one of the classiest and best drivers in NASCAR history, Mark Martin. Mark Martin went on to win 40 career victories, had 56 poles. He's a two-time Southern 500 winner in 1993 and 2009. He won a Coco 600 2002. He had 271 top fives, 453 top tens, and he had 882 career starts. Mark Martin is arguably the greatest driver to never win a NASCAR championship. He came up short 5 times to winning the championships, but Mark Martin was so classy, so generous in his time. He always thanked his team, a driver that always thanked for his opportunities, and a driver that just put up a lot of performances. And he was one of my favorite drivers when he was around at the time as well. Mark Martin, when I saw him win, everyone just got so happy because everyone loved Mark Martin. Who doesn't love Mark Martin? You know, go back and watch the podcast, where they had 1,000 people watching the podcast because Mark Martin is a driver that's still recognizable to this day and a driver that is brutally honest, but a driver that also is caring and always thanks the best people. And Mark Martin is a defining driver of our time. Now we are officially in the top 20, and we've been filming for 37 minutes. God, this is a long project. Up next, in the number 20 spot, we have a driver that has been dominating in the 2020 season, Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin right now sits at 43 career NASCAR victories. That might change this weekend at Richmond, might be up to 44. Who really knows? He has 33 career poles. He is a 3-time Daytona 500 winner from 2016 and back-to-back wins in 2019 and 2020. He has a 2-time Southern 500 winner in 2010 and 2017, 176 top fives, 276 top tens, and he currently right now has 533 career starts. Denny Hamlin is another driver who has been very, very close to winning championships as well. Unfortunately, he did choke in 2010 and 2019. 2019 really wasn't his fault, if we're going to be honest here. 2019, the team put too much tape on the grill. I think that was stupid on their part. But Denny Hamlin is a defining driver. He's a driver that will be an NASCAR Hall of Famer. I just really want him to get that championship. He's been so close to winning it, and it looks like he has a really good shot to win this year. Hopefully, he can get it done this year, but man, Denny Hamlin is a legend. He's been consistent. He went on to win in his first ever Busch shootout, in 2006, which now is called the Clash. He went on to win his first race there. He was so close to winning 2010 championship, so close to winning 2017 where he has issues with Chase, but man, he deserved after what he did to Chase and Martin. When Chase pretty much should have won that race, but I digress. But Denny Hamlin is a driver that I think should have a lot of respect for and a driver that will be defining in his time. Up next, we have the man with the monkey, Jocko Flacco, Tim Flock. Tim Flock won 39 career victories. He was a 2-time Cup Series champion in 1952 and 1955. He had 39 career poles. He had 102 top fives, 129 top tens, and 187 career starts. Like I mentioned, Tim Flock was another driver who was a major superstar, a defining driver in the early 1950s, considered at one point one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history and still one of the greatest NASCAR drivers in history. Tim Flock is a driver that was defining in his time in the 1950s and a driver that really never gave up in his time. Tim Flock to this day stands as one of the greatest drivers of all time and a driver that will continue to be defining to this day. Up next at number 18, we have another driver who was defining around a time Tim Flock was around, Buck Baker. Buck Baker won 46 career Cup Series victories. He is a two-time champion in 1956 and 1957. He had 45 career poles. He is a three-time Southern 500 champion, 1953, 1960, 1964. He had 246 career top fives, 372 top tens, and he had 635 career starts. He was a defining driver at his time. He was a driver in the 1950s, like I mentioned, that was really awesome to watch and race. And I didn't get to see him race again. It was the 1950s when he was so dominant. But, his son was also great, Buddy Baker. But, Buck Baker did a lot for the sport, was very dominant back in the day. And, he did a lot of great things. He's a three-time Southern 500 winner, dominated back then. And he's a driver who's known to never give up. And he was a great driver in the NASCAR sport. Up next, we have Awesome Bill from Dawsonville, number 17, Bill Elliott. Bill Elliott had 44 career victories. He was the 1988 Cup Series champion. He had 55 poles, a two-time Daytona 500 winner in 1985 and 1987. He was the 2002 Brickyard 400 winner. He is a three-time Southern 500 winner in 1985, 1998, and 1994. He has 175 top fives, 320 top tens, and 828 career starts. He is also known as the most popular driver before Dale Earnhardt Jr. came around, and it shows because his son Chase Elliott is so popular to say. A lot of people love Bill Elliott for his awesome Ford Thunderbird, but in the late 80s, he was dominant. He was so good in the 80s, dominated at that time. A champion in 1988. He was consistent, winning races every year. He kind of had a bad stretch in the 1990s, the late 1990s, the late 1990s. I cannot talk. The late 1990s, when he was basically, struggling with his own team. He still was consistent, but he wasn't really winning races. But, I think Bill Elliott was a dominant driver at his time, and Bill Elliott deserves a lot of recognition. And then in the late stages of his career in the early 2000s, went to Ray Everhand's team and began a late career resurgence in the final 3 years. 2002, he went on to win twice. 2001, won at Homestead. In 2003, got a couple victories there. Bill Elliott is a driver who is defining, a driver in the 1980s who also was defining, and a driver that we all stand to this day. And reason is because Chase Elliott is his son, so Chase Elliott is a great driver as well. Up next, in the number 16 spot, we have Herb Thomas. Herb Thomas won 48 career victories. He was a two-time Cup Series champion in 1951 and 1953. Had 39 poles. He's a three-time Southern 500 winner. 1951, 1954, 1955. He had 122 top fives, 156 top tens, and he has 229 career starts. Great average finish, by the way, but the field wasn't as competitive back then, so there is a little bit to go with that. But Herb Thomas was a driver in the 1950s and 1940s. I don't have much to say about him because I think Herb Thomas is just one of the best of all time. I think Herb Thomas is a driver, a lot of recognition, gave a lot on the track, dominated at his time, and Herb Thomas was a great driver in NASCAR, and he deserves a lot of recognition, and he is a NASCAR Hall of Famer, which he should be because he did a lot in the sport. Up next, at the number 15 spot, we had a driver that one way that was called the last true American hero. We have Junior Johnson. Junior Johnson is the highest winning driver to not have a championship with 50 career wins, but he is a six-time owner champion. 1976, 1978 with Yarbrough, in 1981, 1982, and 1985 with Daryl Waltrip. He had 46 poles. He won the 1960 Daytona 500, 121 top fives, 148 top tens. He had 313 starts, so he had also a fantastic average finish. A lot of people consider Junior Johnson probably the biggest cheater in NASCAR history, but sometimes you have to cheat to go out and win, right? And Junior Johnson was a driver that gave all up and all on the track. He had a fantastic time as an owner as well. He's a lot higher in this list because of his ownership, but 50 career victories, man, that is incredible. Not a lot of drivers do have that in our sport, and Junior Johnson is a driver that did a lot of great things, and, like I said, a lot of people consider him a cheater, but Junior Johnson did a lot, and I think that is why Junior Johnson is really awesome and a great driver and a NASCAR Hall of Famer as well because he did a lot of sport. It was in the NASCAR's inaugural Hall of Fame because he was a great owner and a great driver. Up next in the number 14 spot, we have Ned Jarrett. Ned Jarrett won 50 career NASCAR Series victories. He won the 1961 and 1965 Cup champions, 35 poles. He won the 1965 Daytona 500, Daniel. 1965 Southern 500. He had 185 top fives, 239 top tens, and he had 352 starts. He also won the largest margin of victory in a race at that Southern 500. I think he won by 13 or 14 laps, which is possibly the largest margin in NASCAR history. And not only that, he is, like Mike Parsons, a defining announcer, was a great announcer in his time, like his brother Glenn Jarrett was. But Ned Jarrett was also a fantastic announcer, and he kind of quit his career early. He was only 33 years old. So he would have raced longer than he did after 1965. I think Ned Jarrett would have won a lot more races at his time. But Ned Jarrett is also a great driver as well and a great announcer. And I think he still could announce this even at his old age of 87. I think he still could kick ass announcing the sport. And Ned Jarrett is one of the best of all time. Up next in the number 13 spot, we have Rusty Wallace. Rusty Wallace had 55 career victories. He was the 1989 Cup Series champion. He had 36 career poles. He was the 1990 Coca-Cola 600 winner. He had 202 top fives, 349 top tens, and he had 706 starts. The best driver in NASCAR to come from my home state of Missouri. Rusty Wallace was a defining driver in the 1980s and 1990s. Was really awesome with the Raymond Biffle team, but also in the 1990s, kind of helped Team Penske become a dominant organization and kind of helped bring drivers like Kurt Busch and Brad Keselowski up to date because those guys Penske probably wouldn't be as good in Cup if it wasn't for Rusty Wallace. But Rusty Wallace was a great driver, consistent every year. He was able in 2005 in his final year to almost go out and compete for a championship, almost competed for wins that year, had a really awesome final year. 2004 won his final race at Martinsville, passing a guy like Bobby Labonte and Jimmy Johnson to go out and win that race. But Rusty Wallace, man, he was defining a driver that was awesome. A driver that also you did not want to mess with on the racetrack because he's a driver that did kind of have a temper at the same time as well. But you got to thank Rusty Wallace for doing a lot for the sport. And great news to see Rusty Wallace on this list. Up next at number 12, the patriarch of the Petty family, Lee Petty. Lee Petty has 54 career Cup Series victories. He's a three-time champ, the first driver to win 3 championships, 1954, 1958, and 1959. He had 18 career poles. He was the first driver to win a Daytona 500 and a photo finish in 1959. He won the 231 top fives, 332 top tens, and had 427 career starts. Lee Petty was a legend in the 1950s, a driver that almost won every race he could enter. Well, he won 1 out of 10 starts, basically, he can enter. A driver that defined, everyone looked at Lee Petty as like the greatest driver in his time because Lee Petty was a driver who dominated in the late 50s and early 60s, you know. I think his crash kind of did end up impacting him in 1961 in the Daytona 500. That crash did end up impacting him, and basically I think that's what really started the end of his career. But Lee Petty was a driver that was so dominant, and if it wasn't for Lee Petty, Richard Petty would not have been around in NASCAR. Just saying. Up next, at number 11, we have Happy Harvick, also known as the closer. Kevin Harvick has 57 career wins. He was the 2014 Cup Series champion, also a 2-time Xfinity Series champion in 2001 and 2006. He had 31 poles. He won the 2007 Daytona 500 in a thrilling finish with Mark Martin. He's a 3-time Brickyard 400 winner from 2003 and back-to-back winners this year and last year, 2019-2020. He's a 2-time Coca-Cola 600 winner in 2011-2013. He won the 2014 and the 2020 Southern 500, just won the last week's race, which was Southern 500. He had 224 top fives, 384 top tens, and 709 starts at the moment. Let me just say this for the record. He carried Richard Childress Racing after Dale Earnhardt's passing. He took over the number 29, which was the 3-time. He took over that car, and basically, if it wasn't for him, Richard Childress probably would have fallen under a rock. They wouldn't have been able to be as defining as they were. And Kevin Harvick went to SHR and has become the best driver in SHR history. And he's a driver that is still down to this day, possibly having the most incredible year in 2020 with 8 victories already this year having numbers similar to Jeff Gordon had in 1998. Kevin Harvick was a driver that was great and defining, and is still to this day dominating on the track, never giving up. The best driver currently at the moment. I think he has the most wins since 2014. He's been great at SHR and has carried SHR in his time. Now we are finally reaching the top 10. These, in my opinion, the top 10 are the biggest, the best, and the best ever to drive in NASCAR history. Let's get into this. All right, now we're going to start with the top 10 greatest NASCAR drivers of all time. Let's go. All right, so in the number 10 spot, we have Smoke, also known as Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart had 49 career Cup Series victories. He is a 3-time Cup Series champion as a driver, 2002, 2005, 2011, but he's also currently at the moment a 2-time Cup Series champion as an owner, 2011 and 2014. Possibly 2020, question mark on that. We'll see what happens. He had 15 career poles. He was a 2-time Brickyard 400 winner from 2005 and 2007. He had 187 top 5s, 308 top 10s, and he had 618 career starts. Tony Stewart is probably the greatest driver that went from IndyCar over to NASCAR. You can definitely say that for sure about Mario Andretti and AJ Foyt could be up there, but Tony Stewart is the only driver that has success in both of those and just jumped to 2 different series and really had a lot of success. In the 2000s, Tony Stewart was really, really dominant. He was really, really great at time, and possibly my favorite NASCAR driver that has ever raced in NASCAR. Was the first driver I really became a fan of at the time, and Tony Stewart was just dominant in the 2000s. Yes, of course, late in his career, he kind of fell off after his crash in 2013, but 2016 when he won at Sonoma, that made me so happy. I think a lot of fans were overjoyed to see Tony Stewart finally score that final win, and a lot of fans are happy, like myself, in his final year. He didn't get to have a full final year because of his back breaking, but he didn't feel a lot of pain, and Tony Stewart is a driver that was a true American badass. And yes, he did have a temper, but man, a lot of times those drivers really, really deserved it. Up next, in the number 9 spot, we have, driver that, has probably had a lot of tempers, driver that is hated by a lot of drivers, currently probably the most polarizing driver in NASCAR. We have Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch has currently 56 career wins. He was a 2-time Cup Series champion right now, 2015 and 2019. He was the 2009 Xfinity Series champion. He is the all-time winner in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series. He has 32 career poles. He was a 2018 Coca-Cola 600 winner, a 2-time Brickyard 400 winner in 2015 and 2016, 2008 Southern 500, 211 top 5s, 310 top 10s, and 561 career starts. Kyle Busch is the best driver of the Gen 6 era. I don't care what anybody says. He was the best driver of the Gen 6 era. From 2015 to 2019, Kyle Busch dominated the sport. He was the best driver in the series. 2020 has kind of been a different story, though, because he's kind of had a downfall year, but he's still winning races, Xfinity Series, and trucks, which is pretty cool. Well, not to me, but it's pretty cool when Kyle Busch goes out and wins. He does sometimes act like a sore loser, but I think this year he has grown up and matured a little bit. Yes, he does have his famous quote, "It's still 2020. He has some very memorable quotes and sometimes does get backlash from the media, but Kyle Busch is a great driver, a driver defining. He started winning races at the age of 20 years old, and he's been the best driver in NASCAR in a long time. I think Kyle Busch will come back next year very, very strong. I still don't think he has a shot to win races this year at contend for wins. I think he has a very good shot of going out and winning Richmond later this year, but Kyle Busch will eventually get higher up in this list. Will he win more championships? I think he will do that, but he's one of the best ever of all time. Up next, one of the members of the Alabama gang. We have Bobby Allison. Bobby Allison went on to win 84 career victories. He was the 1983 Cup Series champion, the only championship he ever won. He had 59 career poles. He's a 3-time Daytona 500 winner, 1978, 1982, and 1988. He was a 4-time Southern 500 winner in 1971, 1972, 1975, and 1983. And he's also a 2-time Coca-Cola 600 winner, 1981, 1984. He had 336 top 5s, 446 top 10s, and he had 718 career starts. Bobby Allison was always a dominant driver in his time. He was good in the 60s, good in the 70s, and good in the 80s. Unfortunately, in the latter stage of his career, Bobby Allison had a horrifying crash to end his career in 1988 at Pocono, but his legacy still lives on. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have safety barriers, wouldn't have restrictor plates, because his bad crash in 1987, where we're getting up to 210 to 220 speeds down the straightaways. But Bobby Allison always dominated, and a patriarch of the Allison family. His brother was great too, Donnie Allison, but Bobby Allison is one of the best ever of all time and did a lot in the sport. Up next in the number 7 spot, we have Cale Yarbrough. Cale Yarbrough was able to win 83 career victories. He is a 3-time Cup Series champion, all of them years in a row, 1976 to 1978. He had 69 career poles. That's a nice number right there. He was a 4-time Daytona 500 winner from 1968, 1977, 1983, and 1984. He is a 5-time Southern 500 winner in 1968, 1973, 1974, 1978, and 1982. He had 255 top 5s and 319 top 10s and had 560 career starts. Cale Yarbrough was dominant from the start of his career basically to the end of his career. He was still pretty competitive in 1988 when he basically ended up retiring from the sport. Then he went on to be an owner, had a little bit of success with the team as an owner. He did win the 1997, whatever that race was at Daytona with John Andretti. That was really cool to see. But Cale Yarbrough was a defining driver in his time, one of the best ever. You know, not a lot of drivers went on to win 3 championships. And Cale Yarbrough dominated sport in the 1970s and 1980s, and a NASCAR Hall of Famer like he should be. Up next in the number 6 spot, we have Jaws, also known as Daryl Waltrip. Daryl Waltrip has gone on to win 84 career victories. He was a 3-time Cup Series champion, 1981, 1982, and 1985. He had 59 poles. He won the 1989 Daytona 500 on field strategy. He won the 1992 Southern 500, which I believe was his final Cup Series win. He was a 5-time Coca-Cola 600 winner in 1978, 1979, 1985, 1988, and 1989. He had 276 top 5s, 390 top 10s. He had 8 or 9 starts. And not only that, Daryl Waltrip is a fantastic commentator for most of the time when he was at Fox from 2001 to 2019. He's one of the most defining commentators in NASCAR, where his signature line, boogity, 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 let's go racing, boys. But Daryl Waltrip is a legend, a driver that defined racing. He was a driver that gave you a hard time, gave it on the racetrack, very aggressive, went on to win a lot of races in his career. One of the best ever at Bristol International Speedway. I think he won like 12 or 13 times at Bristol, which is incredible to say at the least. He dominated Bristol and was great at many other racetracks in his time. Daryl Waltrip was incredible. Now we have reached the top 5 greatest NASCAR drivers of all time. All these drivers from here on out are all legendary. It's arguable where you could put any of these at, but these are the top 5. Let's start off with the number 5 spot. We have the Silver Fox, David Pearson. David Pearson had 105 career NASCAR victories. He only competed full-time in NASCAR 4 times, but 3 of those years, he went on to win the championship. 1966, 1968, and 1969. He had 113 career poles. He was the 1976 Daytona 500 winner in a thrilling finish with the King Richard Petty. He was a 3-time Southern 500 winner from 1976, 1977, and 1979. He is also a 3-time Coca-Cola 600 winner from 1961, 1974, 1976. Like I said, he was a Silver Fox. He had 301 top 5s, 306 top 10s, and he had 574 career starts. If David Pearson would have competed full-time in NASCAR in every year he won, he probably would be the king of this sport. David Pearson was consistent. You look at his average finish. His average career finish is insane. Not only that, David Pearson is a true legend. Richard Petty says that David Pearson, to him, is the greatest driver of all time. And he is remembered for being an amazing driver in this sport. Like I said, the Silver Fox, dominator on the racetrack, in and out. David Pearson is amazing to watch. Up next in the number 4 spot, we have the Rainbow Warrior, Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon, who is one of the best ever, had 93 career victories. He is a 4-time Cup Series champion in 1995, 1997, 1998, and 2001. He had 81 career poles. He was a 3-time Daytona 500 winner, 1997, 1999, and 2005. He was a 5-time Brickyard 400 winner in 1984, 1998, 2001, 2004, and 2014. He has 6 Southern 500 victories, 4 years in a row from 1995 to 1998, 2002, and 2007. He has 3 Coca-Cola 600 victories, his first career in 1994, 1997, and 1998, 325 top 5s, 477 top 10s, he had 805 career starts. Jeff Gordon in the 1990s was unstoppable. One of his biggest years was 1998. He went on to win 13 victories that year. A lot of people thought he was cheating, but he was just so dominant in 1998. Jeff Gordon was the definition of a legend in this sport. A driver that never gave up. His commentary roles are a little bit different, but Jeff Gordon went on to win a lot of races in his time, you know. From the span of 1995 to 1999, I think he won 40 races in that time. I don't even know if Richard Petty did that. I don't know. Well, I think he did, but Jeff Gordon was the dominant driver of the modern era, the winningest driver, I think, of the modern era as well. Jeff Gordon still was pretty good. He ended up winning his final race in 2015, almost won a championship in 2014. If the playoffs weren't a thing, Jeff Gordon actually would be a 7-time champion in the sport. But Jeff Gordon was great. He had a lot of rivals at the time. You know, Dale Earnhardt and him were really big rivals. Well, they were friends, but also rivals at the same time. Jeff Gordon defining driver on the Mount Rushmore. Don't even at me on that. Up next, we've got the first of the 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champions. We have Dale Earnhardt, also known as the Intimidator. 76 career victories. 7-time Cup Series champion, 1980, 1986, 1987, 1990, 91, 1993, and 1994. He had 22 poles. He finally got an illustrious Daytona 500 win that was plaguing him in 1998. He was a 1985 Brickyard 400 in the second year of the Brickyard. He had 3 Southern 500 victories, 1987, 1989, and 1990. He had 3 Coca-Cola 600 victories in 1986, 92, and 1993. 281 top 5s, 428 top 10s, and had 676 starts. Now, if Dale Earnhardt does not die in the crash in 2001, that really was, a lot of people say that Dale Earnhardt's death really was the cause of the sport's downfall, which I disagree. But Dale Earnhardt's death hurt a lot of people. It hurt a lot of people at the time. And if Dale Earnhardt would have still been racing to this day, Dale Earnhardt probably would have won at least 15 or maybe 10 to 15 more races. He probably would have retired around a year that Rusty retired. Mark Martin was supposed to retire. They were actually planning all retiring in the same year in 2005. But Dale Earnhardt's death does not hurt his legacy. He was one of the best ever in the sport. A lot of people loved Dale Earnhardt. Some people did not love Dale Earnhardt. In the 90s, he had either Jeff Gordon or Dale Earnhardt, and he had to choose which one he wanted to love or not. I think both should be respected, and 2 of the best ever. But Dale Earnhardt, 76 career victories, a driver who dominated at his time. I did not put him as the number 1 because of the wins column, but Dale Sr. probably would have won more races at his time. And now we get into the controversy. Now, the top 2 are very hard to decide. So, you have 2 other 7-time champions of Richard Petty and Jimmy Johnson, who, in my opinion, goes in the number 2 spot. While this driver does have more victories than the other, this driver, I think, had it a little bit easier. It is very hard to tell who is the greatest and not the greatest. The number 2 spot, we have the King, Richard Petty. That's controversial as well. 200 career victories, 7-time Cup Series champion, 1964, 1967, 71, 72, 74, 75, and 1979. 123 career poles, 7 Daytona 500 victories, 1964, 1966, 1971, 1973, 1974, 1979, and 1981. He won the 67 Southern 500, 1975 and 1977 Coca-Cola 600. He is the most wins of all time. Most wins in a season with 27. He had 555 top 5s, 712 top 10s, and he had 1184 starts. And in his final win at 200, he won when Ronald Reagan, the president, came to the track, which was the first president to show up at a race. Now, the reason I do not have Richard Petty at the #1 spot is because I think he had it a little bit easier. Yes, he still had competition, but I don't think there was as much competition for Richard Petty compared to the guy that is in the #1 spot. But you cannot deny the legendariness of Richard Petty, the king, the greatest winner of all time. A driver that never gave up, a driver that was aggressive, but a driver that was respected by many competitors. He really never had any hatred toward any drivers at the time. And I think Richard Petty is a driver that will be defining for many years to come. He still, to many people, is the greatest driver of all time. And I think he is one of the best ever of all time. And it's hard to tell who is the greatest of all time. But Richard Petty, in my opinion, is at the #2 spot. And now we have reached the pinnacle of this episode. An hour and 5 minutes into this video, we have reached the pinnacle. The greatest driver, in my opinion, of all time is Jimmie Johnson. Jimmie Johnson has 83 career victories currently at the moment. He is a 7-time Cup Series champion. He won 5 championships in a row from 2006 to 2010, 2013, and 2016. He had 36 career poles. He's a 2-time Daytona 500 winner from 2006 to 2013. He had 4 Coco 600 victories, 3 in a row from 2003 to 2005 and 2014. He is a 4-time Brickyard 400 winner, 2006, 2008, 2009, and 2012. He won 2 Southern 500s, 2004 and 2012. He had 231 top 5s, 373 top 10s. He had 677 starts. Now, why is Jimmie Johnson greater than Richard Petty, in my opinion? Well, I don't think Richard Petty, I don't think he had to face as much competition as Jimmie Johnson had ever had to face in his career. Jimmie Johnson is a defining driver of this generation. You know, he won 7 championships. You can definitely say, well, he won a lot of them with the playoffs. The playoffs weren't a thing. He wouldn't have 7 championships. He still played the rules right. He followed the rules correctly at the time. It doesn't matter if the playoffs are around or not. Jimmie Johnson followed the rules correctly, and he was one of the drivers who helped define Hendrick Motorsports as well. You know, there are a lot of drivers in Hendrick Motorsports that could say that they won more than 50 races at the time, the only other one being Jeff Gordon. But Jimmie Johnson is a legend, a driver that will be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. There's a lot of hatred toward him. I've always respected Jimmie Johnson. He, in my opinion, stands as the best NASCAR driver of all time. I mean, yes, the last couple years, he's kind of had a bad last couple years, but he's come close to winning at times the last couple years. Best winner he's won the most races at Texas, most races at Dover, most races at other racetracks as well. And he's done a lot for the sport. You know, there aren't a lot of drivers that can say that they won all the crown jewels as well. And Jimmie Johnson is going to go over to IndyCar. I mean, he's going to be doing a lot in the sport. He still wants to race in NASCAR. He's not completely done. What if he goes out and wins as a part-time driver, you know? There is that big possibility. What if he goes and does that? Who really, really knows? But Jimmie Johnson is the greatest NASCAR driver of all time. We have reached the end of this episode. Finally. We finally have completed the project. Guys, you can go and disagree in the comments all you want to my video. That's perfectly fine. If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot more awesome content coming out to this channel very, very, very soon. This is also my 300 subscriber special as well. So you guys got the 300 subscriber special you guys wanted. Anyway, that is going to be it for this episode. I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Turn notifications so you can be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Links in the description below for that. And comment below your thoughts on today's video. Do you disagree with my list or not? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.